Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Captain Marvel, issue number 39, dated July 1975. Okay, so this sort of indicates that this comic is kind of a summer read, and I do remember it on the newsstands, and it was a really nice day. However, this is definitely not a comic you would take to the beach. It's way too involved. In fact, the very first Captain Marvel that I ever bought was actually the previous issue, number 38. And that was also done by Steve Englehart. And Steve Englehart did not write for 8-year-old kids like me. So even though the comic had a cool cover, which is normally how I would pick my comics back then, nevertheless, the story was impossible to read. Although some of the imagery in issue number 38 did end up being in the first Captain Marvel movie. Okay, we see the cover here. It's a pretty good cover. It looks a lot like a Jim Starlin cover, although I'm sure it was done by Al Milgrom, who is a partner of Starlin. We'll talk about him later on. We see Captain Marvel. He's fighting a huge cat-like, tiger-like creature, and we see the Watcher here, and the Watcher is basically saying, "Hey, you're cat food."
Meow 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 meow.
So, and it says, "The fate of the Watcher and the deadly verdict." Dun dun dun. Okay, so some of the events from 38 do overlap in this story, so it's kind of hard to read this story cold, but it does sort of recap what was going on. So you'll sort of know the backstory of what's going on through osmosis. We see Captain Marvel. He's in space. He's being transported at a very high speed. And what had happened in the previous issue was that Captain Marvel had found a plot that was against him. He had gone to the moon to stop it, and he found out the Watcher was involved with this. And there was actually a fight between Captain Marvel and the Watcher. The Watcher felt very bad about this, and he transported himself out of the situation. And I believe Captain Marvel used that same device that the Watcher did to transport himself to wherever he went. So it looks like they're going to the planet of the Watchers. I'm going to talk about the creative team. Excuse me, my throat. It's written by Steve Englehart. Steve Englehart wrote so many great stories for both Marvel and DC. We see Al Milgrom is the artist. Al does a really good job here. He was a collaborator with Jim Starlin on a lot of Starlin stuff. And he was also a very good artist in his own right. Tony Isabella is listed as the researcher. Klaus Janson is the inker. Yeah, Klaus Janson's inks are very strong, but he doesn't really hijack Al's pencils like he would other artists like John Byrne. And we see Len Wein was the editor at this time. Okay, so as Captain Marvel is being transported to this planet of the Watchers, we see that the Watchers from all over the universe have come back to their home world, because apparently what Earth's Watcher did was such a huge transgression that it really required everyone on the entire planet to be involved. So basically all these godlike creatures are all coming together. And we see Captain Marvel, he's joining these. Obviously, the Watchers are not too happy about this. The Watchers have a huge superiority complex. Doesn't matter that they all look like, the Gerber baby food baby. Doesn't matter. These guys, they have a high opinion of themselves. They think they are the shit wherever they go in the universe. So what they do is, since they're not violent and they don't really like interfering, they put Captain Marvel in a stasis field to sort of keep him there until they do their business, and then they can properly extract Captain Marvel back to where he needs to be. These guys can't be bothered with those details at this moment. Captain Marvel, he's stuck in this stasis field. But before they put him in the field, he makes a plea to the Watchers saying, listen, I'm a representative of Earth. And the Watchers are kind of like the Guardians in Green Lantern, Green Arrow 81. Like representatives of Earth, there are no representatives of Earth. So yeah, so they kind of throw him into this stasis field to keep him quiet. However, the Watchers, they're more concerned with our Earth Watcher. I believe his name is Utu. They have these very strange 4-letter names. I'm not going to pronounce any of them correctly. So anyway, they're also telling the Watcher that this guy coming to our planet, we might pin this on you too. So the charges keep mounting on the Watcher here. But the Watcher's feeling terribly guilty about what had happened in the previous issue. So, he's ready to accept his fate. He's gonna lay down on that sword. So the Watchers leave. They show contempt for Captain Marvel, and they just basically transport themselves away. Captain Marvel's there. He's feeling incredibly helpless because this guy was, proclaimed and given the title, protector of the universe. And these two just swatted him away like he was a child. And then suddenly, speaking of child, Rick Jones shows up. Again, the two are symbiotically linked through the negative zone and through the bands that they have. So Rick Jones can observe what was happening to Captain Marvel from the negative zone. And he's basically saying, hey, bro, you're feeling like me, huh? Hey, you know how I feel now. And Captain Marvel is like, he's like, Rick, you have a point. I didn't know how badly this feels, but it sucks being a chump. It must have been hard on you being a chump all those years. And then, Rick is like, come on, shut up. So anyway, Rick comes up with the idea that if they attempt to switch there, that amount of energy usually got them out of whatever mess they needed. So that was the big out for all the writers. If they needed something, spectacular to magically happen, it was when they did this switch that usually that occurred. We see a younger Watcher who's still on the planet. He's probably a teen by Watcher standards. And he's just observing. He's not high enough on the totem pole to actually go to the trial itself. So anyway, while Captain Marvel's trying to work his way through this status field, which is holding him pretty tightly, so he's kind of struggling to get those wrists together. We see that there's an animal watching. It looks like a large tiger. It looks like a fairly peaceful animal, and it would be a fairly peaceful animal on the Watcher's planet. So, the cat is just simply observing and being curious. Suddenly, the switch occurs, and Captain Marvel and Rick Jones go through that switch to change, and they're doing this more by will than anything else. And this is something that has to come up. This was a subversive pro-drug arc done by Steve Englehart. So at a time where the media kind of would focus on anti-drug angles, and you would see the stories or the imagery of all these violent kids looking for drugs or them being high and jumping off buildings. That was normally what you saw in the popular culture. But this was actually a pro-drug story. And I'll get into that as they're explaining. There's a lot of explaining going on in this book. So anyway, the two that they use, they basically are using their wills. And they said they've done this before. Again, plot convenience for the writers. They make the change. It's this huge explosive effect to it. We see that the young watcher, even he's kind of covering his eyes from this. Also, the cat is moving away. The cat's kind of leery about what's going on. The cat doesn't like what's going on with that explosion. Then we see that both Rick and Captain Marvel are occupying the same reality at the same time. So they're free from that symbiotic bond. And this is where the pro-drug angle comes in. Because apparently it was using the psychedelics that created the mental freedom that both Rick Jones and Captain Marvel needed, because both of them were affected by the psychedelic. And it just expanded their consciousness, their awareness, everything like that. And they used it in that way to break free. So that's sort of the pro-drug angle here. A lot of the writers at Marvel knew what to get away with. Clearly, Steve Englehart, he knew he can get away with this. If you look at Strange Tales 181, that entire comic is Jim Starlin clowning on Marvel, his own employer. And he knew he can get away with, getting that story printed. So sometimes you see kind of like some subversiveness. By the way, speaking of that, Al Milgrom, the author who drew this, he actually got into trouble at DC because an editor that he disliked was fired. And in one of the panels that he drew, he left a message, subversively, but he left a message saying how happy he was that this guy was fired. Someone noticed it, and it got published a couple of times, and Al lost his job at DC because of that. So, kind of everything going around. However, this euphoria that Rick Jones is feeling, it's kind of short-lived because the cat starts to attack. Basically, as far as what the cat is thinking, if you've ever owned a dog and a vacuum cleaner, you know exactly what's going on here. So the cat is acting like, the dog attacking a vacuum cleaner, because he saw something that was completely unusual, and this cat doesn't like the unusual, likes the predictable, and he's just feeling angry. And he starts to attack the source of that, and that was Captain Marvel and Rick Jones. Captain Marvel strikes back against the cat. It's a big cat. The young watcher is still watching. But what's interesting is as he's watching, his facial reactions are changing. So it's not like he's just passively watching. He's reacting to what he's seeing. The two, Marvel and Rick Jones, are still in danger because the cat's only stunned at the moment. And this is a big animal that they don't know anything about. So Captain Marvel says, listen, you run off, and I'll take care of this big cat. Rick Jones agrees with that, because even though he's in an exoskeleton suit, the space suit, that enhances his strength, he doesn't feel that it's going to stand up to this large cat. Then we see Marvel fighting the cat. They're going back and forth. The cat is putting up a fight here. This is a high, because it's on the planet of these Watchers where everything is evolved. The cat's evolved, so this is smarter than the average cat. Marvel is kind of going through acrobatics. He's thinking out loud. He's thinking out loud because, remember, the heroes think out loud. The villains talk to themselves. Also, he's not having a conversation with a cat, so he's thinking out loud here. And he's kind of psyching him up, talking about Law of the Jungle. Hits the big cat with a huge boulder. Now, while this is going on, the trial of the Watcher is going on. The Watcher is speaking to the other Watchers, which I assume is all male. I don't see any female Watchers. It's been established that our Earth Watcher is capable of falling in love, because there was a story where he admitted he fell in love with someone he was watching. So I kind of don't know what the kind of the domestic dynamic on this planet is, but he's talking to all his bros, talking about how, yeah, I broke our most sacred law. He says, listen, I know that you want to have a trial, it's an official trial. Us talking about stuff, in front of the campfire is not going to work, so we have to have a special hall. So suddenly, out of nowhere, I think the Hall of Justice, as they call it on the Watcher world, kind of is being created here. Meanwhile, Captain Marvel's still dealing with this big cat. Now, if he can't deal with the cat, I don't know how he's going to deal with a whole planet full of Watchers. The cat looks like it's powering up because it has antlers. So while it looks like a big Siberian tiger, it also has antlers. The antlers do power up. However, Captain Marvel punches the cat in the mouth before I guess it can strike. The cat is unconscious. Captain Marvel's like thrilled that he didn't kill the cat, but at the same time he kind of incapacitated it, and he's thinking this fight's over as far as he's concerned. Rick Jones comes back from hiding. Again, they're talking about the effects that the psychedelics that Rick Jones took, because during Marvel's trip to the moon, it took a few hours. So, and they would have to switch. So at some point, Rick Jones would be floating in space, waiting for the right amount of time for Marvel to come back. So he could come back. Because for some reason there was a time limit placed on them. During that time, Rick Jones had taken a psychedelic pill. And it had caused him, he figured, have a little fun floating, and he thought he would have a little psychedelic fun. But it turned out it had a bad effect both on Rick Jones and Captain Marvel, because their psyches are linked. So, Captain Marvel, who's a soldier from another world, he had no idea what was going on with those shrooms. But nevertheless, Captain Marvel admits, hey, in the end, it had a good effect on us. And I guess Rick is going to be in the shrooms from this point on. Captain Marvel flies him off because, again, they want to catch up to the Watcher because they're concerned about the fate of the Watcher. We see that the cat's starting to wake up, and the young Watcher is still watching the cat. And we're told here that this animal is highly intelligent, and it can hold a grudge, and it does not like what Captain Marvel did to it. So the cat has his own agenda at this point, and that is revenge. So he's just simply going to track Captain Marvel down until he gets his just. And to agree, there are lots of animals who do hold grudges. So that's kind of a very highly intelligent thing. Okay, we see that Captain Marvel, he arrives at that Hall of Justice. Like everything else, the Watcher's world is very high tech. However, they go through this kind of cosmic waterfall, and they enter the realm of the hall. And this is basically all the gods of the universe are here. And we can see this big trial, and the Watcher, Earth's Watcher, is being prosecuted by the Watcher, by the guy who's on top of the totem pole. And Captain Marvel's a little taken aback by this, because this is like this huge demonstration of power. However, both the Watchers obviously notice Captain Marvel and Rick Jones. They're coming in. They don't understand. The Watcher says something really funny here. Says, Marvel, and now another, the boy. Almost like, well, nah, okay. It wasn't quite the insult I thought it would be. Okay, so anyway, Rick Jones is like saying, hey, That's Mr. Boyd to you. Blame the inebriation. So anyway, Captain Marvel, he wants to speak to the to all the Watchers on the defense of Earth's Watchers, on Earth's Watcher, saying that, listen, I understand the circumstances that this happened. You should give this guy a pass. However, the head prosecutor is saying, he's doing that Wizard of Oz thing where he's pushing around Dorothy and saying that he has no rights there. And however, the Watchers realize that force isn't going to stop Captain Marvel. And that's not their way. So they're going to tolerate his presence simply because he's just pestered them so much. And he's explaining, and the Watcher here, the head Watcher, is explaining the history of the Watchers, that basically they were a highly evolved race, and one member, the father of Earth's Watcher, was saying that, listen, we should use our great power to help other races, other species, other planets to develop. And there was an argument about this, and he won out. So the Watchers, they went to other planets. They were kind of busybodies, but they felt they were well-meaning busybodies. However, the technology that they shared with these other planets was used to eventually destroy the very people themselves. So this was very upsetting to the Watchers, because they were the ones who gave them nuclear power, and they're the ones who used nuclear power against themselves. So the other Watchers decided that they were just going to watch. These were kind of like the original reality TV show viewers, and they decided, you know what, well, we're just going to watch a lot of reality shows. But rather than having a TV, we're just going to go to those planets themselves. However, this need to sort of interfere or to kind of feel kinship with the people they're watching, this was sort of passed on to the Sun, our Earth's Watcher. And they're going through the history of the Watcher. In some cases, he would help. In some cases, he didn't. He mostly would be of assistance to the Fantastic Four. However, there were cases where he kind of ignored what was going on and didn't seem to be emotionally involved. And we see other events where the Watcher appeared. This is basically, kind of like a history of the Watcher. Then they're going through the Galactus saga, where the Watcher was actively involved with saving the Earth. However, they kind of point out there were other events, such as, for example, when Thor fought Adam Warlock, which is kind of like, Marvel's like Space Jesus. He didn't do anything about it. He helped against the Overmind, but he didn't help the Avengers against Dormammu. So we see that the Watcher is very fickle in terms of, what he does, whether he helps or he doesn't. Obviously, the Watcher is what the writer needs him to be. So that explains it in whole. But I guess there's sort of a fickleness with the Watcher. It's almost like if the Fantastic Four aren't directly involved, he doesn't want to be involved. So he believes Earth and humanity is worth saving, as long as the FF are the ones doing the saving. If it's those other people, then he's not involved. And but he says, okay, you were interfering, but you were mostly interfering by giving out knowledge, but you acted violently against Captain Marvel in the previous issue, and that was the worst thing that you could do. And Captain Marvel is there explaining what he thinks, was going on with the Watcher. And he's explaining, listen, he may have interfered, but, he was a force for good for Earth. Because every time he appeared and he did do something, it helped Earth. So that's the argument that Captain Marvel is making. The cat has tracked down Captain Marvel to the Hall of Justice. So it's outside. The young watcher is watching the cat because he's not allowed in the hall itself. Captain Marvel is making his case to the watcher, saying that maybe you need to kind of update, your code, your ethical code. This is the same argument that kind of Green Lantern made to the Guardians in issue 81 of Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Now the cat burst in. So you have the top guy in the race of gods. You have the protector of the universe. But God damn it, this cat does not give a shit about any of that. This cat wants to get even over basically a fist fight. And he's like, fuck those consequences. So anyway, he immediately attacks Captain Marvel from behind. He notices, it's the cat, but it's too late for him to do anything. And he gets the full brunt of the cat's electrical charge. The young watcher who is watching and following the cat, he enters the hallway, enters the Hall of Justice, and he informs Captain Marvel, listen, the first shock won't kill you, but the second one probably will. You're pretty strong. Just kind of fight back very quickly. And Captain Marvel's still kind of snapped out of it here. The cat is angry as fuck. Doesn't give a crap what's going on here. He just wants to get even. Rick Jones is making a plea to Earth's Watcher to intervene because he needs help. Rick kind of doesn't want to do the help himself. He's like, hey, listen, maybe you can handle this for me. He's kind of laying a guilt trip on the Watcher, saying he stood up for you. All the other Watchers are watching. However, Earth's Watcher declines to help Captain Marvel. Rick Jones is saying, you're just a low bastard, F you. However, the young Watcher who walked into the Hall of Justice says, listen, I'll help Captain Marvel. And Rick Jones is thrilled. He's thrilled that he doesn't have to do it. So he's expecting this young Watcher to do it. However, the head Watcher says, hold on there. This is not how we act. And the young Watcher kind of says something back to him. And the older Watcher, he's really pissed off about this, saying, how dare you try to school me? How dare you try to school me on this? Meanwhile, Rick Jones is watching this. He can't believe it. His friend's about to be killed by this huge cat. So he rushes in. And he grabs the cat from behind, and he's holding on to the antlers. So he's preventing the cat from striking. What's kind of interesting here was that it looked like the cat had hesitated. And the cat hesitated because he figured that maybe Captain Marvel learned his lesson. This is something that's very rare in the animal kingdom. It does happen. If you make a mistake with chimpanzees, that will be your last mistake. But if you make a mistake with a gorilla, and the gorilla isn't terribly angry with you, or isn't looking for a fight, if you look sorry, the gorilla will accept the display as punishment. So this is sort of how, like, Diane Fossey, when she was out in Africa, Gorillas in the Mist, when she was studying the apes there, she noticed that if you kind of just hunch down and you act like you're sorry, the gorillas will take that as you're sorry. However, Rick Jones doesn't know this. So as he's grabbing the antler, he's just pissing the cat off more. Captain Marvel's saying, don't bro, don't risk your life for me. Rick Jones is okay about this. He says, listen, you've done it for me. I got this exoskeleton, and it really isn't hurting, but yeah, it's starting to hurt now. But Rick is still holding on. Captain Marvel is saying, let go. And what's happening is that Rick Jones is still holding down the cat. Captain Marvel's going to use his wristbands to basically clock the cat on both sides of the head. That's enough to knock the cat out. So hopefully this they won't be on planet for this next grudge. So this fight is over. That was fun. That was a great fight. And I'm sure, honestly, the watchers preferred watching that fight than listening to this trial. So anyway, Captain Marvel is talking about, how, hey, there was interference by both sides here, and it was a good thing. Now it may not be too good for the cat. The cat's still alive, but he got his ass kicked. But it was pretty good for me, considering I'm still alive and Rick is still alive. So that's basically the argument he's making. The older watcher, he's just kind of questioning it, saying, "Listen, this is just one instance, but it can lead to bad consequences." It's sort of like that thing that Yoda said in one of the Star Wars movies.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Also saying, you're making a poor example for the young watcher, because you can see we have this young, tall man here, but nevertheless, he's considered a baby in our eyes, and you set a bad example for him, and he's saying, this is not really great comic writing, but action breeds reaction, which breeds reaction, which breeds reaction, and no action is worthy of a mote of dust to infinity. I have no idea what that means. But nevertheless, it's considered wisdom. The Earth's watcher gives his defense, his position, and his defense is basically my bad. If you read all these dialogue boxes, it basically says my bad. So the my bad defense, it does work. The prosecutor drops the charges. He says, hey, it's good enough. You're in good graces. Rick Jones is like, that's it. And they're just going to take his word for it. And Captain Marvel, in kind of like one of those wonk moments, says, well, they'll believe him. He's a watcher. And that's the end of the story. I thought this was a fun comic. It's one of those comics that's not memorable, but nevertheless, it's an enjoyable read. In terms of the Captain Marvel title, you had the Starlin run, and it never reached those heights. But there are a lot of good comics that came after that. Now, the Captain Marvel before Starlin, those comics are like unreadable. They're terrible. But the continuing tales of Captain Marvel after Starlin, there's a lot of good stuff there. So I kind of recommend that. There is no letters page with the version that I'm reading. So that's about it. And that is my walkthrough of Captain Marvel number 39. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.